My grandmother was a formidable woman and far from any stereotype of a doting grandmother. She grew up in a shtetl in the Ukraine in the early 1900s until her family fled the Cossacks when she was 16 on a ship to Ellis Island. As a young teenager, her job was to strap a sewing machine on her back, walk miles to town, sew for a Gentile family during the week, and walk home for Sabbath. Family lore has it that it was on these walks that she developed her beautiful singing voice, trading songs with the Russian peasants returning from the fields and Jewish and Gypsy travelers. In New York, she was a well-regarded folk singer in the fairly obscure Yiddish folk singing community. My grandmother leading our extended family in song during the holidays was the best part of each holiday. But that didn't mean I wanted her in my living room day in and day out, trying to get to help me to record her songs. Yaakov, her boyfriend, spent a great deal of time at my house. He would put on his most dapper tweed, board a bus, and spend the day singing with my grandmother. They loved to record themselves and called me away from the television every few minutes to help them. They would sing a song and stop the tape, rewind the tape, listen to their voices, and stop the tape. Rewind again, then start the process over and re-record their voices. I knew they were messing with me. These were intelligent people that fled one continent and successfully made their way to another one. Tape recorders were fairly simple machines in the 1970s. Rectangle boxes that could only play, record, fast forward, rewind, and stop. As a young teenager, my favorite way to spend a summer day was sprawled out on my parents' bed watching reruns of sitcoms. My grandmother kept pulling me away from the television because she wanted me to hear these songs. She wanted me to hear the songs of the Jewish diaspora. She wanted me to know the music of my family. To her, this was the music of home. I just wanted to watch Laverne and Shirley in peace. Music wasn't the only lesson she offered that I ignored as a young teenager. My grandmother had an unshakable confidence in herself. It didn't hurt that she was beautiful. At least everyone told me how beautiful she was, but through my teenager eyes, I had a hard time seeing it. But the facts stand on their own. At 16, on a ship from Russia to Ellis Island, she won a beauty contest. She was often pulled off the factory floor where she worked as a seamstress in the garment district to model the clothing they were manufacturing. She looked that good in a skirt. Her self-possession went deeper than that. She had an unwavering belief in herself and didn't really understand a granddaughter that did not share this trait. I was the kind of teenager who hid behind my hair and hoped not to be noticed. This approach didn't work out very well for me as a teenager, and it wasn't working out so well either in my young adulthood. My grandmother, concerned that left to my own devices I would never marry, intervened. One holiday, she pulled me aside to tell me that when I marry, I would inherit her meat grinder. I stared at her blankly, wondering how a meat grinder could help me overcome my inability to flirt. When I didn't say anything to this, she leaned into me and said, "Let people know." At first, I joked about this with my friends. Should I post an ad saying, "Quirky, anxious 20-something comes equipped with good cheekbones and a meat grinder"? But I couldn't get her phrase, "let people know," out of my head. I had made an art form out of not letting the men I loved know how I felt about them. I spent 2 months sharing a car in a tent with a friend I was in love with and never managed to find the opportunity to mention it. I was in unrequited relationships. You might wonder how it is possible to be in an unrequited relationship, but trust me, it is. I did it twice. But no more. From now on, I was going to let people know. The following year, when I realized I was in love with my then boyfriend, I proposed. A few years later, I was too pregnant to travel to New York for Passover. One night, as I was falling asleep, I realized it would be my first Passover without my grandmother leading the songs. I was surprised by how bad that made me feel. The next morning, I called my mom and asked her to get a tape recorder and a cassette and sit down with Grandma and help her record the songs and express mail it to me. So they did. During the Seder, every time we got to a song, I turned on the tape and let my grandmother lead us in song. Even at 90, and through the crackle of the cheap tape recorder, her voice sounded strong. It sounded like home. Thank you.